created quite a theme for this season of Lent. The cost of love. The journey to Jerusalem. Now, I really thought about this theme, and I appreciated Lance last week starting us off and giving us a good solid foundation for us to start understanding what this could mean. But when I really started looking at it, the cost of love, how do you approach that? How do you talk about and think about, does love have a cost? How much is the cost? How much is it too much? How do you measure it? What happens if the cost seems like it's too much? And then you talk about the journey to Jerusalem. I'm not planning on going there. You probably aren't either. And yet, symbolically, we all have our own journey to Jerusalem. Something that we are compelled to do. Something that drives us. Maybe it's a job. Maybe it's a lifestyle. Maybe it's a relationship. Whatever it is, that all of us, though, do have this journey that we take at various times in our life to our Jerusalem. And then when you combine those, the cost of love and the journey to Jerusalem, what do you do with that? So I must admit, I wouldn't use the word struggle, but I was grappling with it, trying to decide which way to go, how to further the conversation that Lance started us with last Sunday. And it was tempting to go a very scholarly, very academic way. And I was really tempted to do something like that because there's so much here that you can really sink your teeth into. And I might have done that until I went to lunch with Jesus. Figuratively. But maybe I need to explain that a little bit. Over the many years, I've developed a meditation style. And it works for me. And this is what I do. I have places in my life that I've been that I know in my mind when I go back there, it's very safe, it's very secure, it's very comforting. Sometimes it's very challenging, but that's okay. One place, for example, many years ago, we went, Nancy and I, to Vail, Colorado, in the big mountains. And especially in September and October, I remember sitting on a bench that was made out of a log on a hill, overlooking the valley. And in the valley were aspen trees, and they had already started to turn. You're surrounded by the big mountains. I could spend a lot of time there. And there's other places in the mountains, on the seashores, by lakes. There's different places that have spoken to me. There's even places local that I've found, parks. And there's one park in particular. I can't tell you the name because I don't know what it's named, but it's about 5-10 minutes away from here. And I've gone there sometimes just to sit. That's where I went this day when I had lunch with Jesus. You see, because how this works is that I'll find my place to be, and I'll just be sitting there, and I'll start, as I get quiet, as I get more comfortable, as I get more open, I'll start seeing Jesus come toward me. And eventually He'll sit down right beside me, right across from me. We happened to be at a picnic table that day. Beautiful picnic table, beautiful day. It was one of those days that, since, especially in my mind, I could make it anything I wanted. Clear blue skies, warm temperature, just a little breeze. Children running off on the side, squealing with delight, dogs chasing each other. It was just a magical place. I was there seated at this picnic table. And Jesus starts walking toward me with a box in His hand. As He gets closer, I see it. Little Caesars. I don't know whether I was just hungry for pizza, but somehow Little Caesar's pizza made it into this scenario. So Jesus comes and sits beside me and opens up. I didn't know Jesus likes pizza, but He did this time. And so we start eating, and then others. So I'm inviting you to be with us too now. Because I think we can all fit around that table. You see, that's one of the things that Jesus does. He finds these places that there's always room for one more. And so we all start gathering around that picnic table. And Jesus is handing out this pizza box, and it's just one box. But strangely enough, everybody keeps pulling out pizza from it. There seems to be plenty there. And then Jesus does what he always does to me. He says, "So, what's going on with you today, Bill?" That's how we start our conversation almost every time. He says, "So what's going on with you?" Sometimes I know, sometimes I don't. But I've learned just to start talking. And it's surprising, amazing what I often discover. So I've been thinking about this theme, the cost of love, the journey to Jerusalem. And I've been looking at especially Luke's version of this. And I say, Jesus, you remember Luke? He wrote a book about you. Did you ever read it? And Jesus says, "No, I didn't need to. I was there. You remember?" And so I said, well, there's some interesting things in this book by Luke. And I guess I have a question for you, Jesus. He allows me to ask questions all the time. Why did it take you so long to get to Jerusalem? And he looks at me, and it's that kind of look that says, okay, you just opened that can of worms. Come on, let's see what you have to say about it. And so I said, well, when I'm reading Luke, who wrote this about you, and the 9th chapter, kind of in the middle, you say, according to Luke, that it's time to go to Jerusalem. In fact, you say something really clever, saying that you set your face toward Jerusalem. I thought that was a pretty clever phrase. He kind of nods, yeah, sometimes I have a good way with words, don't I? He loves to relate. You got to understand that. So I said, so this is my question, though. You see, you say that you need to go. You've set your face. That means you're committed to it. You are going to get to Jerusalem. This is something so important to you that now that's become your focal point. So what do? You're up in the Galilee area, around Samaria, the Lake of Galilee. That's like going from our church to Allentown. You know, it's straight south there. You can't miss it. And it's so surely you just go that way and you're there fairly soon. But what do? You go see Mary and Martha. Now, that's not a direct line. You're kind of zigzagging here. And I don't understand why you did that. Mary and Martha don't have anything to offer you. Mary and Martha don't have any power. They don't have any prestige. They don't have any status. They don't have any resources. They're just two women. And we all know, I say, Jesus, that at that time women did not have much to offer, so to speak. I mean, they were just there. Oxen were more important than wives. And so, why did you go there? He just looks at me. And, he says. And so, and then you went to by this place where a crippled woman was. And again, that's not a straight line. You're zigzagging. You go to see this crippled woman. And now, Jesus, you know, there's been so many times when you've been kind of rude to these scribes and these Pharisees, which I understand. They deserved it. But you've really kind of spoken to them very harshly. And so it seems like this would be a good time. You're on your way to Jerusalem. You're trying to make a difference. So it seems like this would be a really good time for you to kind of dial it back a little bit. Maybe we can work together somehow. You're going to Jerusalem. But no, you see, this crippled woman, you reach out to her. You see her in her pain, and you offer your healing on a Sabbath. Jesus, why did you do that? Because everybody in the land knows you don't break the Sabbath. You're working on the Sabbath with this woman. What are you trying to do? So I'm kind of shaking my head, and Jesus is just kind of there, said, okay, what else? So I say, and then, according to Luke, you make a second announcement that it's time to go to Jerusalem. Okay. So now I can see you making a straight line. Now you're serious. Now. But no, what do? You find a man with dropsy. That's kind of like saying that we have a heart condition. And we have some swelling around the heart. It's a condition, but you go to this man with dropsy. When? On the Sabbath again. And by now you've become kind of well known, and people are watching what you're doing, and there you go again. Is that really helping you get to Jerusalem? And he looks over and he's already passing out more pizza. And he says, and then you go to the lepers, the leper colony. Nobody wants you to go there. Your followers kind of said, no, let's bypass this. Didn't you say, Jesus, that we were going to Jerusalem? Why don't we go to Jerusalem? Not the lepers. Not those people. And yet you go out of your way and you go and you bring healing to the lepers. And then you go on, okay, now maybe, but you go by the children. And these children are out there, and you say, let the children come to me. They need to know that they are loved. They need to know that they're not just cogs in the wheel, that they are real people. You see, children were even below women in status. But Jesus says, no, bring them to me. His followers, your followers, Jesus, you say, no, keep the children away. We don't have time for this. They have no place with us. But Jesus, you said, no, bring the children. And, he says, and then Jesus, you make a third proclamation, saying, it's time we go to Jerusalem. And by this time, your followers, well, they're probably a little confused, because they understand that Jerusalem isn't quite what they thought it would be. But maybe they're seeing you go around and around and around, and so what's going to happen? So what do? Okay, finally you've got it. Finally you're getting ready to go, and you're getting through Jericho, and you're right there, and what do? You see a blind man. You're walking down the street, the crowds are starting to gather, and they're talking about it. This blind man is to the side, and he starts wondering, who is this? Somebody tell me, who is this? And the crowd says, it's Jesus of Nazareth. And so this blind man tries to get up and start saying, Lord, 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 have mercy on me. And the crowd tries to get him to be quiet. But the man continues, Lord, have mercy on me. And Jesus, what do? How easy it would have been, how smart it would have been for you just to keep going. You're getting close to Jerusalem. That's where you need to be. That's where you're going to change the world. But Jesus says, no, bring him to me. And they do. And the man is somehow he can see now. Okay, I got to back off this. This was good, Jesus. Because this would have been headline news. You could have really played this up. Get some photos. Get some news at 10. Get some really great PR, some press releases. Get it out there. But what do? Instead, you turn around and say to the man, your faith has made you whole. And then you go on. And then, still in Jericho, you find this guy named Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus. Everybody knows Zacchaeus. He's the chief tax collector. He's the biggest thief in town. He's the one that's robbing from the poor for his own pockets. And nobody likes Zacchaeus. He's a short little guy, apparently, and he can't see what's going on, but the crowd is starting to gather still, and he climbs up in a tree. And so how could you do this, Jesus? How could you stop then? If anybody you don't want to associate with, surely that's this Zacchaeus guy. But instead you stop. You see him. He's like, Zacchaeus, come. We're going to spend some time together. We're going to spend some time together. And you do. Jesus, I think I've got his attention now. I think maybe he's hearing that, okay, I've laid out my case. I mean, I'm concerned about what's going on here. I need an answer to this. So, Jesus, why did it take you so long to get to Jerusalem? Many years ago, I heard somebody talk about Jews always answer a question with another question. There's a story about a man who comes to a rabbi and says, is it true? Do Jews always answer questions with a question? And the rabbi turns to him and says, do we? So there's Jesus. I've asked him the question. And he turns around to me in Jewish tradition and says, how could I not stop? The pizza's flying about now. People are diving in. Me too, that's good. And then Jesus says, you know what? I'm not sure that's the best question you can ask me. Why don't you ask me instead, what did I do on this journey to Jerusalem? Did I love them? So ask me, Jesus says. Jesus, did you see clearly those people in the crowd? Did you see clearly those people that would have been so easy to just ignore, just to avoid? Did you see clearly the pain and the sorrow of those who were hurting? And Jesus, did you hear? Did you really hear the voices of those that were being drowned out by all the other noise? Did you really hear the voices of those who had no voice? Did you really hear what they were saying? And Jesus, did you reach out in such a way that those you touched knew you loved them, that they were cherished, that they were someone to be embraced with love? Jesus says, those are the questions you want to ask me. About this time I realized I think I already know the answer to those questions. Of course, Jesus, you had to stop. That's who you are. And then Jesus says, and you know, you're right about this thing about the cost of loving. There is a cost. A lot of times in our journey to Jerusalem, we won't get there on time. In our journey to Jerusalem, we might end up taking a different path, in fact. In our journey to Jerusalem, we might, in fact, not even end up where we thought we were going to end up. But this cost of loving, he says, it's never too much. It's never too much. So I'm sitting there watching that this strange box of Little Caesars pizza can't be emptied. There's always more. This picnic table that we've all gathered around, people keep coming, and there's always room. And so it's at that point that I realize maybe these are the questions I need to ask myself. in my journey to my Jerusalem? Am I clearly seeing those around me? With open eyes and an open heart, am I seeing those who I might be easier just to not see today? Because after all, I'm busy. After all, I'm on my way to Jerusalem. Or do I really hear those voices? Those voices that sometimes they can be kind of hard to hear. Because of the noise, but also sometimes because they're hard to hear. Am I listening? And when I'm reaching out to those around me, am I reaching out in such a way that they will know they are loved? They are cherished? Will they know that I'm ready and eager to embrace them as who they are? I'm drilling down deep right about now. I'm realizing that Jesus, He's done it again. All of a sudden, we might have been talking about somebody else, but now all of a sudden, I'm talking about me. And so I'm sitting there, and Jesus has that smile. You know that smile when the teacher looks at the student and realizes, they finally got it. It's been in front of them all this time, but they finally got it. And he has this little smile. He doesn't have to say a word, but he does. Because then he says, oh, by the way, there's more pizza. Anybody hungry?